Good evening. So Father Michael landed safely this morning in Rome for his pilgrimage and then went onward to Florence to begin there. And he'll be in Assisi on Friday, which is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. So I look forward to hearing about his experience with all the kind of waves of people that are going to be there and to see how he handles being around so many people. It'll be funny. I wish I could see it. Anyway, as I was dropping him off for the airport yesterday, he brought out his luggage and he had a backpack, like a book bag, and he had the middle-sized suitcase, not the huge one, not the little carry-on size one. He said, I could have fit everything in the carry-on size one, but then I wouldn't have had any room to bring anything back. Now, I travel very differently. When I went on my last pilgrimage, I had my extra jumbo large suitcase that weighed 60 pounds. I had my carry-on suitcase. I had a book bag, and I even had the rolling folding garment bag to put my vestments and things in. And I said, I don't understand how you can travel so light. And he said, I don't understand how you need so much junk when you travel. I said, well, you never know what you're going to need, so be prepared. And he said, maybe you should look at that second reading a little closer for this week's readings. Come now, you rich, weep and wail over your impending miseries. Your wealth has rotted away, your clothes have become moth-eaten, and your gold and silver have corroded. The corrosion will be a testimony against you. It will devour your flesh like a fire. And I started to kind of reflect a little bit, and I said, yeah, maybe I'm a little worldly. I like the comforts of this world. Maybe I like the comforts of this world too much, which is a really easy temptation to fall into. To look around and to look at things and to say, oh yeah, good food, right? Nice clothing, warmth, comfort, all of these things that the world kind of tells us, hey, this will make you comfortable, right? Watching the Georgia Bulldogs almost win on a giant TV, right? Watching the Falcons actually win against the Saints today on a giant TV, that's impressive. Putting so much stake in, the sports teams that we follow that if they do lose, our life is just upended. Putting all of our faith, all of our trust in our wealth. Putting all of our faith and our trust in the things that we own. Putting all of our faith and our trust in the things that we cannot control, but we try so desperately to do so. Jesus says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. Your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Now, there's a lot of places in the gospel where Jesus is speaking literally, right? He says, I am the bread of life. He repeats that several times to make that point. But there's also places in the gospel where he speaks in a more hyperbolic fashion. So if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Now, the church, of course, teaches that bodily mutilation is a grave sin. So is Jesus really telling us, hack off your hand? Is he really saying, chop your foot off? Is he really saying, take a fork and pop your eye out? No, of course not. But he's drawing a comparison for us to say, if there is something in my life that causes me to sin, I should get rid of it. If there's something in my life that causes me to put more focus on it than on God, then I should get rid of it. I know some people that all day long in their house, cable news is turned on. The other day, preparing for the great hurricane that wasn't here, it was unfortunately in North and South Carolina, Tennessee. But I did something that I haven't done in 4 years. I turned on the news. It's like, who are all these new people, these new news anchors? And there's even new news channels, I found out. And kind of watched and tried to see what was happening, and I was like, it's just kind of, they want me to be scared. Okay, yeah, I get it. And I watched, and I put a little bit too much faith in the news. I said, nope, not gonna happen again. I myself am guilty of, listening to my own kind of news and politics every day. Sometimes I end up listening to 2 or 3 hours of commentary. And I think to myself, is this really the best use of my time? Is this really something that is going to help to make me holy? Could I not be using this time more wisely? Could I not be using this time for prayer? Or I think about the countless hours wasted watching YouTube or reading articles online and thinking to myself, well, this is good. This is a noble thing because I'm pursuing wisdom, right? I want to know how things work. I want to know how an Abrams tank works, so I'm going to watch the infographic video on how they put it all together. Is that really something useful? Or do I just like to pride myself on saying, I've got all this weird, bizarre knowledge. I could tell you more about airplanes than you'd ever want to know. Pilots tell me, Father, that's enough. Like, I don't know why you know that. But I reflect and I think about the way that we live our lives, the way that we focus on the things around us, the way that we try to control. Maybe it's not something material, or maybe it's not knowledge, maybe it's something like power. Maybe it is something about, like I said, control. Whatever it is that we're holding on to, whatever it is that we're clinging to, almost subconsciously or consciously for our salvation, can we ask the Lord to make us aware of what that is, and can we let go of it? Think of the image of a diver, right? They take weights down with them to kind of drag them down further as they're diving, and then when they come up, they unhook the weights and they fall to the bottom. I don't know if those weights are lost forever, or if someone else goes and brings it back. I really don't know, but that's not relevant to my image that I'm trying to make here. They're being weighed down, and they're physically removing weight so that they can ascend more rapidly. For us, as we try to ascend to God, as we try to make ourselves live lives of holiness, do we recognize the things that are holding us back? And if so, can we let go of them? When I reflect on that, it's a difficult thing. I say, well, yeah, I do. I recognize a lot of the things that hold me back. I recognize a lot of the things that I should change, that I can control in my own life. I recognize a lot of the things that I would be better off without. I recognize in some relationships, maybe not the most healthy relationship to have for one to grow in holiness. I think to myself, how can I change that? How can I let go of that? How can I cut that off? How can I pluck that out? How can I get rid of it so that I can focus more intently on the face of Christ? Do we even ask ourselves that question? How can I more intently focus on the face of Christ? Do I focus enough on it? Probably not. What can I do? What can I change in my own life so that I can be more aware of God? What is it that controls me? We talk about freedom and slavery, right? And we say, oh, well, we're free to do whatever we want, right? So if you want to binge YouTube for, however many hours a day, you're free to do that. If you want to, watch sports all day long, you're free to do that. If you want to, let the little distraction box that you carry in your pocket kind of be the thing that, you don't know what to do, pull out the phone. Look at the phone. Start, I don't know, maybe I'll check my email, maybe I'll play a game, maybe I'll find a video, I don't know. If we're aware of those things, then should we ask ourselves, am I really free? Am I really free from attachment to the things of this world? Or am I enslaved to them? Am I dependent upon the things of this world? Am I dependent on something else other than God? Whether it's a constant thing or whether it's a time-to-time thing. And if I acknowledge that I'm not as dependent on God as I ought to be, how do I fix that? Well, that's the process of conversion. That's called growing in holiness. That's recognizing, okay, perhaps there's some vice in my life that I need to root out so that I can build virtue. Perhaps there's some penance that I need to do so that I can grow in holiness. It's better to enter into life crippled. It's better to enter into life with only one foot. It's better to enter into life with only one eye than to have him here on earth. It's better to enter into life poor. It's better to enter into life detached. Earlier at the Spanish Mass, I was asking folks, how many of you grew up on El Rancho, which is like what they call out in the country. But it's not like our out in the country, it's like way out in the country, maybe don't have electricity, maybe don't have running water, certainly don't have, like garbage collection. And I thought, I asked several of the older people, I said, you grew up and things were easy, right? Things were simple. Maybe for many of you, you grew up and you remember on Sunday everything was closed. There were only 3 TV stations. You didn't have a distraction box in your pocket. If you needed to use the phone, you had to go over to the wall where it was attached and make sure that, nobody else was on it and figure out how to work a rotary dial. That'd be a fun activity at youth group. Get an old rotary phone and see if anybody can actually dial it. Maybe for some of you, you had to pick up the phone and say, connect me to, whoever. Did anyone actually have to do that, like talk to the operator? You're not that old, Mike. Really? Oh, for long distance? I remember even, like you only had 200 minutes to use on your cell phone plan and you had 200 texts. You couldn't go over, right? Nights and weekends were free, so and we shared our minutes, so, right, Mom and Dad said, you better not be using those minutes during the day. You got to wait until after 7 o'clock. Gosh, if life were just so simple like that, right? If we weren't tied to so many, just like information is so readily available. You get on an airplane now, you can have Wi-Fi because Elon Musk's got his satellites flying through space and you can just beam back and forth between the airplane. They have built-in distraction box in the seat in front of you, but that's not enough. We need to be able to have the internet. In fact, I was really, the thing I was dreading most about the storm that it was coming was that it would knock out our power or that it would knock out our internet. Because when the internet's knocked out, nothing works. Our phones don't work because they're voice over IP. Our door locks decide that they're just going to randomly unlock. We can't do anything in the office. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, please, God, don't let the internet go out. We've really put our trust in interesting places. We've really put our trust in things that cannot save us. Because when they do, when they become moth-eaten, when the gold and silver corrodes, it's useless. It doesn't do anything for us. But we came to rely on it. Can we rely on God? Yeah, the power goes out and it's maybe fun for the first couple of days because you got candles and flashlights and board games and go back to the kind of simpler ways, right? And then your food starts to spoil and you kind of get bored and your phone battery dies and all the other stuff gets dark, can't see. But it really is simpler. I remember growing up in the Boy Scouts, we would go camping 1 weekend a month. We didn't have phones. We didn't have really the only electronic thing that we had was a flashlight. I had an air pump too for my air mattress because I was a little extra with my sleeping arrangement as a Boy Scout. Cot and 2 air mattresses and sheets instead of a sleeping bag. I know that surprises you guys so much. But gosh, I can't imagine just going out in the woods for a weekend now without any contact. It's what do I do? What if something happens and I need to know about it? Can we trust in the Lord innocently? Right? Last week I talked about that, trusting in God with the innocence of a child. Of a small child who dad can do everything. Dad can fix anything. Dad can make whatever problems go away. Can we look at our Father in heaven with that level of innocence? Can we let go of our own insecurity? Can we let go of our own distrust? Can we let go of our own unbelief? And say, yes, I will trust like that. That's hard. That's not something that I think we can do completely on our own without God's grace. Because we look around and we say, no, I need to do this myself. I need to control this aspect of my life. I need to control everything my kids do. I need to know where my kids are at every moment. I've got my little parent creeper app to know where my kids are all the time. And it's a two-way street because they know where you are too. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Just saying you grew up without it, I grew up without it. Things are simpler. It's a different world now. It's a scary world, so it's good use of technology. But to be able to just have that simple, childlike trust. God says, look, I promise you, you're going to be much happier if you cut off this thing that's keeping you from doing my will. If it's your hand, if it's your foot, if it's your eye, if it's your iPhone. If you cut this off and get rid of it, you are going to be so much happier. You're going to be so much more fulfilled. Well, no, that couldn't be possible, God. You don't know what you're talking about. If you quit putting so much focus in politics, if you quit paying hyper attention to the news, if you quit only ever thinking about money and material things, if you didn't make an idol out of sports, if you didn't become addicted to knowledge, pointless knowledge, you might actually have real, true fulfillment. So the challenge that Jesus is issuing us here is not to make life more difficult. It's not, oh yeah, cut off your hand and, then see how you fend. No, rather it's, hey, this thing that's hurting you, if you get rid of it, you're going to be a lot happier. This thing that's impeding you from doing my will, if you get it out of the way, you're going to be happier. So I think it's something important for us to reflect on in our lives. What are those things? What are those hands, feet, and eyes, metaphorically, that God is kind of telling us, hey, cut that out. Get rid of that. See how much fuller your life will be without it. See how much fuller your life will be without whatever it is that is impeding you from doing his will. We do that. And yeah, at first it's scary. But then slowly, we begin to trust more and more in God. And so let us ask that he would give us the grace to be able to acknowledge whatever it is in our lives that are preventing us from following him. The grace that we may at least desire to cut it out. And then, of course, finally, the grace to actually do it. So that indeed we may enter into life happy, full, members of the body of Christ. Let us ask that God would continue to open our hearts to the desire to do his will each and every day.